This story is a work of fiction, inspired by real events. Names, dates, locations, and identifying details have been changed or dramatized to protect privacy and enhance the narrative. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental or used fictitiously. This content is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. It does not aim to glorify crime, promote violence, or pass judgment on real individuals. Viewer discretion is advised. Some scenes may contain mature, disturbing, or triggering content. What you are about to watch could have happened anywhere, to anyone. It's inspired by real events. Whispers of truth, buried beneath layers of fiction. We've changed the names, the dates, the locations, but the emotions, the betrayal, the fear, those are real. This story is not meant to accuse, only to reveal, to make you question, who do you really trust? If stories like this keep you thinking, long after they end, hit subscribe, smash like, and drop your theory in the comments. Now watch closely, before the truth disappears again.
She thought she could live a double life and keep both worlds from colliding. A loving husband in Sugarland, and a 64-year-old Houston oil magnate who treated her like a secret worth keeping. But when she finally said the one word he'd never heard in his entire life, no. His obsession turned into revenge, and an entire family paid the price. If you believe power, money, and love should never mix without consequence, hit like, subscribe, and stay until the end, because this story proves that even the richest hands can be stained by silence. In Texas, the houses all look the same: white fences, trimmed lawns, quiet streets that pretend nothing bad ever happens. And inside one of those homes lived Danielle Brown, 43, mother of 2, wife of 16 years, known for her calm smile and church voice. Her husband, Marcus, was a civil engineer, the kind of man who worked 12 hours and still came home with dinner on his mind. They had built a life from scratch: mortgage, family trips, photos lining the staircase. Everything looked steady. But happiness doesn't always mean peace. When Marcus started taking longer contracts out of state, weeks at a time in Louisiana and Oklahoma, the silence crept in. Danielle filled it with routines, then with wine, then with someone who noticed her loneliness. His name was Terrence Cole, a 64-year-old Houston oil magnate whose handshake could make city officials rearrange meetings. He met Danielle at a community fundraiser downtown. She'd come with a friend. He came with power. He was charming, old school, deliberate, and generous. He spoke like someone who'd already decided what he wanted. And when he said her name, he made her feel like she still existed outside the roles of wife and mother. At first, it was innocent: texts about business, calls about charity events. Then came the lunches. Then came the gifts. When Marcus called from job sites, Danielle smiled through the phone, her heart divided between comfort and guilt. Terrence made her feel seen, but his attention had weight, a kind of attention that didn't like to share. When she hesitated, he reassured her with money and words that sounded like devotion. When she tried to leave, he reminded her how much he'd done for her. Soon, the gifts were too big to explain: a diamond bracelet, a new phone, an apartment lease in her name she never signed. Danielle told herself she was in control. But Terrence had already built a cage, one made of promises, not locks. And the day she decided to walk away was the day he decided no one else would ever have her again. Terrence Cole came from the Houston oil fields, a self-made man who turned ambition into empire. He'd started as a refinery technician in the 1980s, working double shifts, saving every dollar. By 40, he owned his first drilling company. By 50, he was funding campaigns. By 64, he was one of the most influential black businessmen in Texas, a man whose phone calls could make investigations pause and whose checks could make headlines disappear. He wasn't used to hearing the word no. His downtown penthouse overlooked the skyline, the kind of view that reminds people they're above the city they control. He lived in silence, surrounded by expensive art and the hum of security cameras. For men like him, control wasn't a habit, it was oxygen. Danielle fascinated him precisely because she wasn't impressed. She didn't chase status. She didn't ask for favors. He called her real, and that made him want her more. At first, she felt flattered, then trapped. Every gift came with a question. Every compliment came with surveillance. He'd call her late at night just to ask where she was. He once sent her driver home because he didn't like the way the man looked at her. The people around Terence had learned never to question him. His assistants deleted texts. His bodyguard handled personal errands. And when Danielle began to pull back, that quiet arrogance turned into a cold obsession. She started receiving flowers with no cards. Her friends noticed black SUVs parked across the street some nights. One evening, her phone rang 3 times. When she answered, Terence's voice said only, "I know you're home." Then silence. By then, she understood something most victims realize too late. That control doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it whispers until it owns you. And when she finally told him she was ending everything, his reply wasn't heartbreak. It was a promise. "If I can't have you, Danielle," he said, "then neither can he." It began with a single call. "Tell your husband the truth," the voice said, calm but final. "Or I will." Then the line went dead. Danielle stood in her kitchen, the glow of the refrigerator light touching her face. Outside, sprinklers hissed across perfect lawns. Inside, her world was cracking. Her phone slipped from her hand. Her chest tightened. Every sound, the air conditioner, the fridge hum, suddenly felt like a threat. She tried to make dinner, but the knife shook in her grip. From the living room, Marcus called, "Everything good?" She forced a smile he couldn't see. "Yeah. Just tired." But the truth was clawing at her throat. That night, Terence texted again. "Leave him, Danielle. I'll make sure you and the kids never worry about money again." Minutes later, another message followed. "Refuse me, and you'll wish you hadn't." Her heartbeat drowned out the rest of the night. Each ring of her phone made her jump. Each passing car outside made her check the window. The next day, she turned her location off, blocked his number, deleted old messages, but control doesn't end when the phone goes quiet. He started sending gifts again. Roses. Jewelry. A note with no signature. And then came the message that froze her blood. Slipped under her windshield wiper, folded once. "If you won't be mine, no one will." That night, she told Marcus she wanted to move, said she was tired of the neighborhood, wanted a fresh start. He laughed softly, kissed her forehead, and said, "You're always worrying, babe. We're fine." But she wasn't. Every night after that, she slept with the lights on. And when she looked out at the street, she sometimes saw a car she didn't recognize, windows tinted, engine idling, waiting. To her neighbors, it was just another quiet Texas evening. But for Danielle, the countdown had already started. Thursday, 9:47 p.m. The heat outside still clung to the air, even after dark. Marcus sat on the couch finishing a report for work. The kids were upstairs watching TV. Danielle folded laundry, pretending life was normal. Then she heard it. A car engine, slow, steady, pulling up outside their gate. No one was supposed to visit that late. She glanced through the blinds. A black SUV. Headlights still on. Her phone buzzed. One text, from a number she didn't save. "I kept my promise." Her breath caught. "Marcus," she whispered. "Something's wrong." He looked up, confused. "What are you talking about?" Before she could answer, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then darkness. Marcus sighed, reaching for the flashlight. "Damn breaker again." But Danielle knew better. Through the silence came the crunch of footsteps on gravel. "Stay with the kids," Marcus said, stepping toward the hallway. Then, a sharp crack. Glass shattering. A voice calling her name from the dark. The next sounds came like fragments, a struggle, a crash, Marcus shouting, then a door slamming hard enough to shake the house. Upstairs, the children froze, holding their breath, praying not to move. Neighbors later said they heard a scream, then tires peeling off into the night. By the time police arrived, the street was silent again. The Brown family's home, so bright hours earlier, was now sealed with yellow tape. Marcus was found near the hallway. Danielle's phone, shattered beside him. The children were discovered in their room, safe but speechless. When dawn rose over Sugar Land, news spread faster than the sirens could fade. A respected family gone. And the man last seen leaving the neighborhood, Houston businessman Terrence Cole, had vanished before sunrise. Before sunrise, patrol cars lined the Brown street. Neighbors stood in their robes, whispering into phones, the kind of fear that makes everyone speak softly, as if volume could wake the dead. Detectives moved through the house like surgeons, their flashlights tracing the story written in silence. There was no forced entry. No fingerprints. Every security camera on the block had gone dark an hour before the killings. Whoever did it knew the house, knew the schedule, and knew how to disappear. Inside the kitchen, police found a phone smashed in half. In the driveway, tire tracks that didn't belong to the family's cars. And in a drawer by the bed, a small, black notebook. The first page said, "If anything happens to me, look at him." The "him" was underlined twice. The following pages were scattered thoughts. Written in rushed, shaky handwriting. "He watches the house. He says no one will believe me. He always knows where I am." Those words changed everything. This wasn't random. This was personal. Detectives traced Danielle's last calls to a number registered under a company name, Cole Energy Holdings. It was one of Terrence Cole's shell firms, the kind he used for donations and private matters. When police visited his downtown office, they found it empty. Desks cleared. Computers wiped. Surveillance footage, gone. By the time they issued a warrant, Terrence's jet had taken off from a private hangar at Hobby Airport. Flight plan, unclear. Destination, classified. His lawyers claimed he was out of the country, for business. Reporters flooded the scene. The story hit Houston news for 3 nights straight, then faded just as quickly. Wealth has a way of making tragedies look like misunderstandings. Weeks passed. Evidence trickled in, receipts for gas, late-night toll charges, phone towers pinging near Sugar Land that night, all pointing to him. But without witnesses, it wasn't enough. The case stalled. One detective, speaking off record, said, "It's hard to chase a man who built the road you're driving on." Months later, the house stood quiet, its windows boarded, its yard uncut. The Brown children moved in with their aunt in Dallas, waking from nightmares that sounded like footsteps and doors creaking open. Their aunt said sometimes they still kept the lights on all night, not because they were scared of the dark, but because darkness reminded them of silence. Danielle's family tried to push the police for answers, but each call ended the same. "We're still reviewing evidence." Evidence that somehow kept losing relevance. In Houston's business circles, people stopped saying Terrence Cole's name. His companies dissolved. His partners distanced themselves. Rumors whispered that he had left for the Caribbean, maybe South Africa, somewhere warm, quiet, and beyond extradition. Others said he never left Texas at all, that he lived under another name, behind guarded gates. The justice system didn't want to find him. Some said it couldn't. And in time, the Brown family became just another headline no one wanted to remember. But within the community, Danielle's story grew into something else, a quiet warning. Mothers told their daughters about her when they spoke about love and attention. Churches held candlelight vigils that slowly became prayers for protection. And in every whispered retelling, one question remained. How can someone vanish so easily after destroying so much? At the end of the year, a small ceremony was held near the house. Neighbors lit candles, their reflections flickering in the broken windows. A soft wind blew across the empty street, carrying whispers of her name. Justice didn't come. But remembrance did. And sometimes, that's all a community can hold on to, the act of remembering what power tried to erase. Time moved on, but the silence never left. The brown home was sold, remodeled, and repainted, yet every family that moved in said the same thing. They couldn't sleep through the night. Not because they believed in ghosts, but because the house remembered. Years later, the story resurfaced when one of the Brown children, now an adult, spoke at a victims' advocacy event in Dallas. He was a law student then, standing behind a microphone, speaking to a quiet room. His voice trembled only once when he said, "We don't tell our story to shame our mother. We tell it because love can blind you faster than fear can save you." The room stayed silent for almost a minute. It wasn't pity they felt, it was recognition. Because Danielle's story wasn't just about betrayal. It was about control, how love becomes dangerous when it's used as ownership. It was about wealth that buys silence, and power that bends justice. And it was about a woman who thought she could balance loyalty and guilt until both swallowed her whole. Terrence Cole was never seen again. His mansion in River Oaks was eventually auctioned, its walls stripped bare, its luxury replaced by emptiness. The empire he built out of oil and charm dissolved like smoke. The city forgot him, but the silence he left behind never did. For the Brown children, life became about remembering without reliving. The son became an attorney for victims of domestic abuse. The daughter became a counselor for young women learning to recognize manipulation disguised as love. They found peace not in answers, but in purpose. And maybe that's the quiet redemption buried beneath tragedy. That even when justice fails, truth still finds a way to speak. Because every case like this has two funerals. The one that ends a life. And the one that ends trust. And sometimes, it takes years for the world to understand that what killed Danielle Brown wasn't passion or anger. It was power that refused to be told no. If stories like this remind you that silence protects power, not justice, hit like, share, and subscribe. Because every time we tell their story, we take a little power back.